Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, guys. Welcome back to your daily American English pronunciation show. Wake up, American. Again, we meet every single day because this is the big thing, and this maybe captures your experience over the weekend. How much English do you feel like you used this weekend? Honestly, whether it was with family members, maybe colleagues, maybe at the work this weekend, friends, people online, people abroad that maybe you don't know. How much English did you use this weekend? Because if you're like some people I know, when the weekend comes, it's really difficult. You lose some of those opportunities that maybe you have during the week to practice. And that really slows you down. That's part of the reason why I started this podcast, is because what tends to happen is my students are not practicing every single day. And then they can get discouraged in their own growth because things slow down. And I don't want that to happen to you. So I don't necessarily care how long you study for every day, but the big thing I care about is that you show up every day. That is definitely the big thing. And when I say I mean me. Hello, my name is Jeff. It rhymes with breath. That's one of the 4 keys to a natural sound in an American English accent, including placement, pitch, breath, and trying to weaken your consonant sounds. We're going to be highlighting today one of those keys, which is breath and diaphragm. And again, if you maybe didn't get a chance to practice much this weekend, there's a great chance that your placement has risen a lot, that our throat is maybe a little bit more constricted. And if you need to speak American English in an American English accent today, well, then we're going to do some breathing exercises to kind of help you out, get back on track to sound natural. I encourage you to do some of these exercises right before, if you have a meeting or you're about to do some talking. Okay, so just a note on that. So quick good mornings or good evenings, Kesako Lihas. This evening, Rodera. Good to see you. Thanks for stopping by as always. And some Kudin, Jaja. Glad to see you. And likewise. Okay. So what we're going to be focusing on today, like I mentioned earlier, is going to be talking about breath. One of the things that we mention so often with breath is we focus on our diaphragm. And you may be wondering, what is your diaphragm? I can show you. In case you're not familiar, your diaphragm is an organ. Hi. So your diaphragm is an organ that's basically located. Let's get this camera angle going. Kind of around there. Okay. It's like if your lungs are here, your diaphragm's a little bit lower. And your diaphragm is responsible for allowing your lungs to expand as your diaphragm drops. So your lungs get bigger so you can take in air. And then as you breathe out, your diaphragm raises, kind of squeezes your lungs, and air pushes out. This is really, really important because what happens is in American English, we want to use our diaphragm. Speech that engages your diaphragm is speech that is able to reach a lower register. It's able to get some warmer pitches. It's able to get some resonance. To give some examples of what it sounds like if you engage your diaphragm, the way I'm talking right now. So if I say, for instance, like E, you can hear it's really low and bassy in the vibrations. Versus if I do I don't have any of that lowness to my voice. Versus now I can like shake the floor and things like that. So this is all very exciting stuff. Okay. Give me one moment, guys. I will be right back. Okay.
You
What's that?
were probably in school years ago when your nice English teacher taught you to say these words.
Wrong.
All contain vowel sounds that consonants can transform into horrible, horrible monsters. We are hunting down consonants starting with the letter L. Say these words.
Sorry about that. I know Emmanuel will be excited to see that if he watches this. So the first thing we need to do is make sure we're engaging our diaphragm. Okay. One other technique you can do really quick that you guys have probably seen before, but if you're new, this is going to be very helpful, is you can actually check yourself to see if you're using your diaphragm when you talk. What you're going to do, I'm going to try to adjust my camera to make this a little clearer. Okay, this angle should work. All right. So what you want to do is you want to take your fists. These are your fists, these guys. You're going to put them on the sides of your stomach where your ribs are. These are your ribs through here. Okay, put your fists on your ribs and you're going to try to press a little firmly. Okay, so press and breathe in. And you see what happened there? Everything kind of just opened up. Okay, so now what we're going to do is then we're going to breathe out. So breathe in and then breathe out. And then breathe in. And then breathe out. Okay, so that is one quick way you can check to see if you're actually engaging your diaphragm. Because if you're engaging your diaphragm, what's going to happen when you're talking is it's all going to contract. So you can check this with an individual word, let's say, or an individual sound. Let's say a sound a couple of times. Okay, so we're going to do the E sound. So I'm going to breathe in. And let's say eh, 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 eh. You can see that movement. Versus if I do something like this. E, 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 E. You see there's no movement there? And you could also probably tell that the sound was different. That was a higher placement, and that was also not, there was no engagement of my diaphragm. Obviously, those are big problems. Okay, so that's one quick exercise you can do to check yourself. This also works for a sentence. Okay, so let's use this sentence that I want to also break down from a breath and consonant perspective. Okay, so let's do the same thing. I'm going to say the sentence 3 times. I'm going to breathe in. None of those regulars wrote figuratively. None of those regulars wrote figuratively. None of those regulars wrote figuratively. Okay, let's say that again without engaging the diaphragm. I'm going to breathe in. None of those regulars wrote figuratively. None of those regulars wrote figuratively. None of those regulars wrote figuratively. You could probably once more hear that the quality of my voice was just not the same. Okay. So we want to make sure when we're speaking American English, we're engaging that diaphragm. As you're talking, you want to have a nice kind of slow contraction, things moving in. That's a sign that you're engaging your diaphragm. If you don't have that, that's a good sign that you're not engaging your diaphragm. So we want to watch out for that. Tied to breath, I did have a question. I forget if it was from Cove Leehouse or from another user, but thank you for the question. The question was basically with breath. How many times, for instance, can I say the word apple in one breath? And in a lot of ways, it doesn't necessarily matter. Ideally, you want to be able to say it more than like 3 or 4 times. But honestly, the amount of times you say it can be very, very high because when we say that we need breath to be moving, it's not that we need a lot of breath. Look, I need to talk like this. Or I just kind of run out of breath. That's not a good way to talk. It's just a constant slow release of air. That's the big thing. So let's just kind of breathe in and see how many times I can say the word apple. And this is another thing you can be doing. Try to engage your diaphragm as you do this. I'm going to breathe in. Apple, 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 apple. Okay, I didn't count. Did anyone count? Let me know how many I did. But that kind of gives you an idea of what you're looking for with sentences. It's basically going to be that slow release of breath. Notice that the air never completely stops. And this is something that in your first language may not be happening. In your first language, you may be blocking some of that breath. Okay, it's like apple, apple, apple. That's a very choppy sound with a much higher placement as well. Okay, so we're trying to avoid that sort of sound. It's not apple, 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 apple. The other thing too is that when you can hear when I say it like that, apple, 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 it's a lot choppier. And the reason for that is because I'm going a lot heavier on the consonant sounds, when in reality in American English, I want to go heavy on the vowel sounds. Okay. Kolihas is mentioning that they tried too. They said, I said it 5 times more than me. That could be a sign you're letting out breath too much breath at once. It's not apple, apple. Like if you hear heavy, like apple, that's way too much breath. Way too much. It's a constant, slow release. So I would encourage you to kind of practice releasing less breath, but more consistently throughout. Okay. One last breath exercise. So let's go back to this sentence here. Uh, this can be an intimidating sentence. There's a lot of consonant sounds. There's those N sounds on none. There's those TH sounds and Z sounds on those. Regulars has those R sounds, that awkward L sound. Um, wrote with that R sound again. Figuratively, you have that short I, you have that heavy G, that fast D sound, the V, the L. There's a lot of things happening here. However, none of that really matters because we're focused on the vowel sounds. So let's kind of work backwards a little bit. So this is just another exercise you can do to practice your breath, and then we'll head out. So we have this word figuratively. So what are your vowel sounds? I was working with a student on this yesterday, and we got it sounding so much smoother. Figuratively, focus on your vowel sounds. So you have an I, which is your stress, and everything else after that can be so much weaker because it's not stressed. It's like your, I, and it doesn't even need to be perfect. That's perfect. That's fine if you can do it like that. Then you can add the consonants back in. Figuratively. 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 Okay. Then we have a rote. So we have O, wrote figuratively. O, wrote figuratively. Okay. We have the word regulars. It's like hour, regulars, hour, regulars. Just the breath keeps flowing, right? So we have hour, those regulars. Hour, those regulars. We have an hour, none of those regulars. I missed an There should be, it should say none of those regulars. Excuse me. None of those regulars. Hour, none of those regulars. So the whole thing with just vowel sounds. Uh, error. None of those regulars wrote figuratively. So again, error. None of those regulars wrote figuratively. I know it sounds like mush. I know it sounds ridiculous. However, it helps us draw more attention to the vowel sounds because if your consonants are too heavy on this phrase, it's going to be very easy to start blocking breath and end up with a choppier sentence like none of those regulars wrote figuratively. 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 Okay, so the first time I said it, heavy consonant sounds. The second time I said it, heavy on the vowels. So that just is to show the impact of focusing on vowel sounds and breath as you guys do this. Hope you guys found those breath exercises helpful. Play with it. Let me know how many times you can say the word apple. Okay. Are you able also to improve on it? Okay. Keep me posted on that. Thank you guys so much for your time. I appreciate you. I hope you have a good day. Have a good night. Have a good afternoon. And I'll see you guys tomorrow morning, our next episode of Wake